In the hallway, midday. The kind of silence that comes right before something breaks. Then, shouts, a loud crash. He hadn't even found his next class when it started. Just 4 hours into his first day at a brand new school, and already all eyes were on him. But not the kind you hope for. He kept walking, head down, backpack tight to his shoulders. They followed. Close, too close. "You lost or something?" One of them barked behind him. Another chimed in, "Nah, he thinks he's tough. Fresh meat with an attitude." The crowd didn't say much, but they watched. That made it worse. It always does. He turned the corner, heart pounding, not from fear, but from restraint. Because every part of him wanted to turn around. Every part of him knew how to handle this. They didn't know who they were messing with. Not yet. One of them shoved him, hard. The hallway grew louder, voices rising like a chorus around a fight waiting to happen. The smell of cafeteria food, mixed with cheap cologne and dirty sneakers, hung in the air. He stepped back, looked up, and in that instant, just a split second, you could see it in his eyes. They pushed the wrong kid. You're watching Echoes of Hope Stories. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from viewers around the world. Because this story, it's not just about school. It's not just about bullies. It's about what happens when silence finally breaks, and how one kid decided that enough was enough. Malik Thompson was the kind of kid most people never really noticed, until they did. 16 years old, tall for his age but always careful not to take up too much space, he kept his voice low and his posture calm. The type of calm that only comes from having been through more than most people would ever know. He had just moved from Atlanta, his home since birth, to a small, mostly white town that barely made a dot on the map. To outsiders, it looked like a postcard. Clean streets, perfect lawns, and a high school with a freshly painted mural about unity. But Malik knew better than to trust appearances. He stepped onto campus on a Tuesday morning wearing clean sneakers, a plain black hoodie, and a quiet sense of hope. Not the naive kind, but the kind you carry when you've had to start over more than once. He wasn't looking for attention. All he wanted was a chance to focus on his studies, make the basketball team, and maybe, just maybe, breathe a little easier. Malik's father, a retired Marine, had spent years teaching him discipline. Not just in words, but through action. Every morning before school back in Atlanta, they'd train, sparring drills, push-ups, shadowboxing. It wasn't just about strength. It was about focus, control. The idea was never to start a fight, only to know how to end one if you had no other choice. "Keep your hands down until you have to raise them," his father would say. "Then make it count." Malik listened. He always listened. Not just to his dad, but to the world around him. He learned quickly, especially growing up black in America, that people judged you before you even spoke. He'd seen it happen too many times. Like the time he and his dad got pulled over in their own neighborhood for looking suspicious. He was only 11. The officer had his hand on his gun the whole time. His father never flinched, never raised his voice. But Malik saw the tension in his jaw, the fire behind his silence. That moment never left him. It taught him that the world doesn't always wait for you to prove your worth. Sometimes, it makes up its mind the second it sees your skin. When his family moved, he thought, maybe, just maybe, things would be different. His mom got a new job, his dad wanted more peace. And his little sister, Layla, was just excited to have a bigger backyard. But Malik, he kept his guard up. He was the only black student in most of his classes. Teachers didn't know how to pronounce his name on the first try. Some didn't even try. Students stared at him like he was either a threat or a curiosity. At lunch, he sat alone the first few days, not because he was antisocial, but because no one sat next to him. And the few who did approach only asked him about rap, basketball, or if he had a record. Still, he smiled when his little sister ran to him after school, backpack bouncing, breathless with stories of her day. Still, he thanked his teachers when he left class. Still, he showed up every morning, on time, well-dressed, and with his head held high. Malik wasn't looking for trouble. Never had been. But trouble, in places like this, often had a way of finding boys who looked like him. And when it came knocking, Malik wasn't just ready. He was trained, and the kids in that hallway, they had no idea who they were about to mess with. Jefferson High looked polished from the outside. The banners on the front gate read, "Unity through Community," and every hallway had posters celebrating Diversity Week. But under that surface, beneath the motivational quotes and themed assemblies, was a student body quietly divided. The cliques didn't just exist. They were fortified. You had your athletes, the drama kids, the AP scholars, the influencers who ruled Instagram like royalty, and then you had kids like Malik. Not nerdy, not loud, not overly confident, just different. Different skin tone, different background, different walk, and in a place like this, different was enough. From the moment Malik stepped foot into those hallways, eyes tracked him. Some curious, some judgmental, others downright hostile. A few teachers tried to seem warm, but their smiles faded quickly once they realized Malik wasn't there to perform for their expectations. But it wasn't the teachers he needed to worry about. 3 days into the new school year, Malik crossed paths with Chad. Chad Whitmore wasn't just another student, he was the face of Jefferson High. Quarterback of the football team, son of a prominent local businessman who donated to the school every year. His picture hung in the gym's trophy wall, and every pep rally felt more like a coronation than a celebration. Chad had charm, but it came wrapped in entitlement. He was used to being the loudest voice in the room, and the final one. He noticed Malik not because of anything Malik did, but because of what he didn't do. Malik didn't look impressed. He didn't laugh at Chad's loud jokes in the cafeteria. He didn't move out of the way in the hall like the others. And when Chad's girlfriend, Lauren, happened to glance Malik's way and smiled, just smiled, it planted a seed Chad didn't like. That seed grew fast. At first, it was just comments. The kind of jokes that get passed off as just teasing when a teacher is nearby. "Yo Malik, what part of Wakanda you from? Damn, you got that street hustle walk, bro. You selling something? Careful, he might box you out and jack your shoes." The jokes came with smirks, with backslaps, with just enough distance to deny intent. Chad didn't have to say the worst of it. He had Tyler and Josh for that. Two shadows that followed him everywhere. They weren't as bold, but they were loud. Loud enough to echo Chad's tone and make sure Malik got the message. Every school has its codes. At Jefferson High, the code was clear: blend in or be a target. The school staff wore blinders. They loved Chad. He was their golden boy. His father sponsored the news scoreboard. His mom chaired the PTA. When Malik brought up feeling uncomfortable, the counselor gave him a pamphlet on adjusting to change and suggested he give it time. Time didn't help. Malik tried to stay low. He focused on class, helped his little sister with homework, kept to himself during lunch. But the whispers kept getting louder. The stares turned into shoves. Someone scribbled a slur on his locker in pencil, light enough to be wiped away. No cameras caught it. No witnesses spoke up. Just like that, it disappeared, like it didn't even happen. Malik didn't flinch, not on the outside. He held the tension in his fists, in the corners of his jaw. He walked the halls like he was balancing on a wire. He'd seen this before, how fast jokes turned into threats, how fast a hallway could become a trap. But Chad wasn't done, because in Chad's eyes, Malik's silence wasn't strength, it was defiance. And that made Chad furious. What made it worse was Malik's discipline. His grades were solid. His teachers began to notice him, not for drama, but for effort. He didn't just join the basketball tryouts, he dominated them. Coaches started whispering about replacing a senior who thought his spot was safe. That senior? Chad's cousin. Jealousy dressed up as school spirit. Racism hiding behind just messing around. And every day, it built. Jefferson High didn't need open hatred to be broken. It thrived on silence. On polite smiles from teachers who didn't want to stir controversy. On students who didn't want drama, on bullies who knew exactly how far they could push without getting caught. And right there, caught in the middle, was Malik. One day, just a few weeks after the start of school, Malik walked into the cafeteria like he always did. Quiet, controlled, eyes scanning the room. His sister's words from that morning still echoed in his head. Don't let them change you. But the moment he stepped past the lunch tables, something was different. The stares weren't just curious now. They were waiting, because Chad had a plan. One that would push Malik past the edge, and once the tray hit the floor, there was no going back. It was just before fourth period. The cafeteria buzzed with that usual mix of chaos, trays clattering, sneakers squeaking against tile, chairs screeching across the floor. Malik walked in with his backpack slung over one shoulder, a quiet rhythm in his step, head slightly down but alert. He didn't scan the room for friends. There were none, not here. Just the same divided tables and familiar glances that always lingered too long. Grabbing a tray, rice, soggy green beans, something that resembled chicken, he made his way to the far corner, same spot he chose every day. It was near the vending machines and under a flickering light nobody ever fixed. Not the best seat in the house, but quiet, out of the way. No one bothered him there. Until today. As he sat, Malik heard it, a sudden shift in the air. Not silence exactly, but a change. Laughter that carried a certain edge. Footsteps that didn't match the usual cafeteria shuffle. That's when he saw them. Chad, Tyler, and Josh, weaving through the tables like they owned the place. And in many ways, they did. Chad locked eyes with him. A smirk pulled at his face, but it wasn't friendly. It was something else, something colder, calculated. He changed course, stepping directly toward Malik's table with that cocky strut, arms swinging just enough to get attention from the other students watching. Chad didn't say anything at first. He stood there for a second, towering over the table like he was inspecting something. Then, with an exaggerated spin, he tripped. His elbow shot out and crash. Malik's tray went flying. Rice, beans, and whatever that meat was exploded across the floor. Gasps. Then laughter. Someone let out a whistle. "Oops," Chad said, tone laced with mock innocence. "Didn't see you there, LeBron." He emphasized it with a fake wince and a crooked smile. "Guess I didn't recognize you without your entourage." Malik stared at the mess on the floor. His hands were still on the table, steady, unmoving. Inside, his stomach twisted. His heart thumped hard, steady, but not out of fear. Not this time. He slowly looked up at Chad, their eyes locked. The room got quieter, not silent, but you could feel the tension shift. Even the teachers by the door glanced over but didn't move. Too far. Too many kids, too much risk of making a scene. The laughter faded into awkward whispers. Malik said nothing, not a single word. He grabbed a napkin and began to clean what he could. Methodical, calm. Josh chuckled. "Bro, he's like a robot." Tyler added, "He's used to mopping, huh?" More laughter. That time, sharper. But Malik didn't react. Not the way they wanted. His eyes stayed on the tray, on the mess. He finished cleaning what he could, picked up the ruined tray, and walked it back to the bin. His hands never shook. His back never curved. And the entire time, Chad watched him with growing frustration. Like he couldn't understand why Malik hadn't snapped. Why the kid from Atlanta hadn't lived up to the stereotype they'd crafted in their heads. Malik returned to his corner. No food this time, just water. He sat back down and pulled out his notebook. Acted like the past 5 minutes hadn't just happened in front of 100 people. But they had, and they weren't forgotten. The girl at the table 2 rows over, she lowered her gaze. She'd laughed, but now she wasn't sure why. The boy near the vending machine clenched his jaw. He didn't say anything, but he stopped chewing. Even some of the younger students whispered behind their hands. Something had shifted. This wasn't just a joke anymore. It wasn't just high school hazing. It was targeted. Clear. And Malik didn't flinch. That made people uncomfortable. Because silence? Real silence? It speaks louder than shouting. It lingers longer than any insult. After lunch, Malik walked through the hallway like he always did. Calm, quiet, focused. But now the whispers followed him. So did the looks. Chad leaned against a locker, arms crossed, watching him pass. And for the first time, he felt something unfamiliar. A flicker of doubt. Because the kid he thought he could break with one shove didn't break. He didn't even bend. And that meant trouble. Because when someone doesn't react, you don't know what's coming next. And Chad hated not knowing. But Malik, he knew. He'd been here before. And he wasn't done. The cafeteria incident didn't end with lunch. It was only the beginning. By the next morning, Malik walked into school to find something waiting for him. A message. Bold, unmistakable, and loud without making a sound. His locker, number 231, 3rd row from the science wing, was tagged. Not just scribbled, but carved deep into the metal door. 1 word, 5 letters. A racial slur so loaded it could stop someone cold. Some students passed by without looking. Others stole glances and kept walking. And a few, they smirked. Like they'd been waiting to see how he'd react. Malik didn't touch the locker, just stared at it. Then looked up, toward the security camera hanging above the hallway corner. The red light blinked. He took a picture with his phone, quietly, then walked to the office. The secretary barely looked up. "My locker was vandalized." "By who?" "I don't know, but there's a camera." She blinked, then shrugged. "We'll let maintenance clean it. You can use a spare for now." That was it. No questions, no follow-up, no apology, just indifference. By third period, word had spread, not just about the locker, but about Malik's silence. Some students respected it, others mistook it for weakness. And Chad saw opportunity. In gym class, Malik went to change into his uniform, but his shoes, custom Jordans his dad gave him before they left Atlanta, were gone. Not misplaced, stolen. The empty space on the bench told him everything. He checked the lockers, then the trash bins, even the lost and found. Nothing. When he brought it up, Coach Hammond barely looked up from his clipboard. "Sounds like you need to keep better track of your things." "They were stolen. From the locker room," Coach shrugged. "Still your responsibility." He left school that day in silence. No calls to his dad, no complaints to administration, just the same walk home, the same tight grip on his backpack strap. But when he got home, he didn't go to his room. He went to the garage. The bag was already hanging, leather cracked and worn from years of use. He wrapped his hands, no music, no noise, just fists connecting with the bag over and over again. Each punch a release, each breath sharper than the last. Sweat rolled down his face, shoulders tense, eyes focused. He remembered the rhythm of training. Malik hit the bag one last time, hard, then let his hands drop. From the door, a soft voice cut through the quiet. "You okay?" It was his little sister, holding a popsicle, her hair tied in lopsided puffs. He turned, wiping his face, tried to smile. "Yeah," he said, "I will be." She walked over and stood next to him. "You want me to beat them up?" she asked. He laughed for real this time. "Nah, not yet." The next morning, he returned to school with the same face, the same walk. But everything inside him? That was different. And for the first time, he was ready. The hallway felt different that morning. It wasn't louder, wasn't quieter either, but there was tension in the air, thick enough to make people hesitate before speaking. Like the school itself was holding its breath, waiting for something it didn't have the courage to name. Malik walked through that tension like he'd done every other day. Calm, collected, headphones in, backpack slung low. He knew the eyes were on him now, not just from the cafeteria crew, but from the quiet ones too. The ones who didn't laugh, didn't speak, just watched. He turned the corner near the main lockers, past the big mural where seniors took pictures, and there they were. Chad, Tyler, Josh. Like always, Chad led the way. Varsity jacket on, jaw clenched, hands loose at his sides like he was deciding whether to punch or perform. Behind him, Tyler and Josh flanked, like shadows trying too hard to be seen. Chad stepped forward and stuck out a foot. Malik didn't trip. He stopped, clean, silent. The crowd around them grew quickly, like blood in the water. Phones slid up, record buttons tapped. Even the teachers in nearby rooms didn't step out. They'd seen enough to know when to look the other way. "Oh, you too good to watch your step now?" Chad said, voice mocking. "You act like you own the place, boy." The word hung there, heavy, calculated. A challenge. Malik met his eyes. No twitch, no flinch. His voice, when he finally spoke, was steady. "You got one more." Chad smirked. Took a slow step forward. "What? You scared?" He shoved Malik hard in the chest. Gasps echoed around the hall. Malik didn't move. He didn't stumble. Just adjusted his footing like a boxer lining up a stance. He looked at the crowd, looked back at Chad, and then he dropped his bag, slowly, deliberately. The hallway froze. Chad didn't wait. He lunged forward, swinging wild, fast but sloppy. And Malik? One step, one pivot, one punch. It landed square on Chad's jaw with a crack that sounded louder than it should have. The kind of sound that stops laughter mid-mouth. The kind that silences entire crowds. Chad's body twisted before it dropped, legs folding under him, eyes wide, confused. It was clean. It was controlled. It was earned. Before the moment could reset, Tyler rushed forward, eyes wild, arms swinging. Malik sidestepped, grabbed his arm, and twisted, just like his dad taught him. He brought him down gently, knees first, then planted a hand between Tyler's shoulder blades to pin him. No rage, no extra hits, just enough to stop it cold. And then the silence exploded. Students shouted. Phones were raised higher now, capturing every angle. Security rushed in from both ends of the hallway. One guard pulled Malik back, rough, loud, but the other one froze when she saw Chad still on the floor. Josh just stood there, wide-eyed, like his voice had left him. A girl whispered near the lockers, her voice barely audible over the chaos. That kid just floored a varsity linebacker. Malik stood between the noise, breathing steady. He looked at Chad, then the crowd, then the security guard still holding his arm. He didn't fight the grip, didn't resist. He just raised his chin slightly, like he'd been waiting for this moment to finally speak without saying a word. And in that hallway, where the rules had always been rigged, Malik finally rewrote one. Malik sat in the principal's office like a criminal. The chair was too low, like it had been chosen for this exact reason, to make students feel small. Across from him sat the assistant principal, arms folded, voice neutral, like she was trying to convince herself she wasn't part of the problem. "You've been suspended for 5 days," she said. "Zero tolerance for violence." Malik didn't argue. He didn't nod either. He just stared at the spot on the desk where her fingers clenched and unclenched around a pen. It didn't matter that it was self-defense. It didn't matter that half the school saw Chad throw the first shove. It didn't matter that the phones were rolling. All that mattered was who they wanted to protect. "You understand the consequences, right?" she asked. He said nothing. Outside the office, word was already spreading faster than the suspension notice. The video was up within an hour, 2 angles, slow-motion edits, captions. "Chad gets dropped by new kid, boy, that's discipline. Tap justice for Malik." It hit Instagram first, then TikTok, then Twitter. Local pages picked it up. Kids at other schools reposted. Adults in town, those who always said they didn't see color, started seeing a little too clearly. By sunset, the hashtag was trending in the state. Parents were talking, coaches were watching, alumni were emailing the school board. The school's silence grew louder by the hour. At home, Malik sat in the garage again, hands taped, punches landing rhythmically on the heavy bag. He wasn't angry anymore, he was focused. The door burst open, his father stepped in, not calm, not reserved, not this time. "They suspended you?" he said. Malik nodded once. "That's not happening." 15 minutes later, they were back at the school. Father in uniform, medals on his chest, fury in his voice. The front office scrambled when he entered. The same people who smiled politely on Malik's first day now wouldn't meet his eyes. "I want a meeting," his father said, voice deep and commanding. "With the principal. Right now. And bring that coach too." The principal stumbled through excuses. "We're still reviewing. It's policy. We have to ensure safety." But Malik's father wasn't having it. He slammed a hand on the table. "My son was cornered, harassed, assaulted, and the moment he stands his ground, not throws the first punch, not even raises his voice, you punish him?" The room went quiet. That's when another voice spoke up from the back. It was Mr. Johnson, the only black teacher on staff. U.S. history. Calm eyes, tired voice. "I've seen this before," he said. "Chad's name comes up a lot. Not just with Malik, there are complaints, reports, but they never made it past the front office." No one answered, because they already knew. This didn't start with Malik, but maybe it ends with him. Students of color who'd always kept their heads down started walking taller in the hallways. Some wore t-shirts with "Justice for Malik." Some wrote letters to the board. Even kids who had never spoken to him before nodded when they passed. For the first time since he'd arrived in that town, Malik wasn't invisible. And neither was the truth. 5 days. That's how long Malik had been away from school. 5 days to digest the chaos, the video, the debates, and the messages of support flooding in from every corner. It felt longer. It felt like a lifetime, like everything had changed in an instant, but in some ways nothing had changed at all. Malik walked through the school gates that morning, and it was quieter than usual. Not in a bad way, but in a way that felt different, as if the air itself had shifted. The whispers were still there, but now they weren't full of mockery or fear. They were full of respect. And maybe a little nervousness. Malik didn't say a word. He just walked to his locker, like it was any other day. But it wasn't. Chad wasn't there. The halls had already been buzzing with rumors the day before. Chad had been removed from the football team, indefinitely. No more varsity letters for him. No more passes for bad behavior. The investigation into his actions, particularly with Malik, had begun. The administration had no choice but to act when the video had gone viral, when even people from other schools started chiming in about how wrong it was. The school was trying to salvage its image, but Malik wasn't interested in their apologies. He had made his stand. The first person to approach him was a younger student, a freshman, by the looks of him. He was nervous, shifting his weight from foot to foot, eyes glued to the floor as he spoke. "Thanks," he said quietly. For standing up." Malik didn't know what to say. He simply nodded, offering a quiet smile. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Then another student came up, and another. It didn't take long before Malik realized they were all thanking him. The kids who had been too scared to speak up, the ones who had always seen what was happening but never thought anyone would care. They were all watching, and they weren't looking at Malik with pity. They were looking at him with admiration, respect. A few teachers passed by, nodding in acknowledgement. A teacher who had once ignored the slurs against Malik now looked him in the eye and said, "Good to have you back, Malik." He didn't say anything in return. He didn't need to. At the beginning of the day, Malik was called into the principal's office. The principal wasn't as cold as she had been before. Now, she sat with a more somber expression, her fingers tapping lightly against the desk. "We'd like to offer you a seat on the school's anti-racism student panel," she said. "We believe you can help us make real changes here." Malik didn't respond immediately. He wanted to, but he had to think for a moment. This was the kind of thing they promised every year, some panel to show they were doing something. But he knew he had power now. He knew he could use this to force real change, to make sure this didn't happen again. "All right," he finally said, "I'll do it." Malik left the principal's office with a feeling he hadn't had before. Hope. Real hope. Walking down the hallway later that day, he passed by a group of students huddled together, whispering. Malik caught one of their glances, and without thinking, he just gave a small wave. They waved back. It was different now. They weren't avoiding him. They weren't talking behind his back. They saw him, really saw him. For the first time, he wasn't just the outsider. He wasn't just the new kid. He was Malik Thompson. And that was enough. As he headed to his next class, his voice echoed in his head. "They thought they could break me, but they just showed me why I need to stand stronger." This wasn't the end of the fight. It was just the beginning. As Malik continued his walk through the hallway, the final moment of that fight flashed before his eyes. Chad cornering him, trying to make him bend, trying to break him. But Malik didn't bend. He didn't break. He fought back. And when it mattered most, he stood taller than they ever thought possible. Malik reached his classroom door, pausing just for a second before entering. He looked around him, at the people who had once seen him as an outsider, who had once made him the target. And now, they saw him as something else, something stronger, something real. Voiceover echoed in his mind, and he said the final words, the words he had been waiting to say for so long. Fighting back isn't always with fists, but when it is, you better make sure they remember it. The message was clear. The fight wasn't just for him. It was for every kid who had ever been ignored, overlooked, or silenced. For every student who had ever been treated as less than. Malik knew now that his fight wasn't over. It wasn't just about standing up for himself. It was about shaking the system awake, making sure that what happened to him didn't happen to anyone else. The moral was simple, yet profound. No one should have to fight to be respected. But when they do, let the fight wake the system up. This is for every kid who stayed silent. You're stronger than they know.